Conor McGregor has been going extremely hard on the narrative of him being president and bringing change to Ireland. And I know what everybody's going to say. They're going to tell you that Conor needs the vote of 20 sitting parliament members. He needs to be voted in by 4 independent city councils, all this type of stuff. And even if that did transpire and came to fruition, then he wouldn't have the power to change any of the stuff that he's talking about. You know, that can kind of blackpill a lot of people. And given the fact that Conor's personality is kind of a love-hate type of a thing with the Irish people, and the fact that he gets some brutal press here in Ireland, you could be dragged into the thought of, it's a load of shit, like, if no one's going to do anything here, like, what's the point in even talking about it? I'm gone past that because of posts like this. And you know what, I'm just going to fucking put my hands up now, because I was driving in a car yesterday and I heard these experts talking about the presidential election here in Ireland, and the names that were being put forward were outlandish. For people here in Ireland, Joe Duffy, Bertie Ahern, Francis Black, absolute nobodies who have spent years and years being propped up by the national broadcasters. This is outlandish. Absolutely outlandish. If Joe Duffy, Francis Black and Bertie Ahern have a chance, then yes, we are going to talk about Conor McGregor being president.
I'd like to take this chance to apologise to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
Corrupted by greed, here's one thing to mull over Ireland on our potential presidential candidates. Of all the candidates suggested, lurking and hoping, I'm the only one that the Irish know for certain will not fold to greed. I have more property, more land than all of them. I have never and would never sell out my country and its people. With all the other potential nominees, we just don't know. How will they respond to an entirely alien position that they have never been in? They may or may not be good and hold up, but history says, and the odds show otherwise. It's just too risky. I'm the only one proven loyal to the soil of Ireland. I will put an end to the preposterous racket that is enriching greedy lost souls as Ireland's president. As president, I end it to their face. Vote McGregor. And he had this attached to a photograph from a news article about Banty McGaney, and 14 family members paid over 130 million to house refugees. Companies owned by JAA manager and businessman Seamus Banty McGaney and 14 members of his family have been paid more than 130 million by the state to house asylum seekers and refugees since 2020. Some GAA businessman who I don't know and don't care to know, and his family just got 130 million. And what I will say before we jump into any of these numbers, and we'll keep this really brief, it won't be a super deep dive. What I will say is whatever numbers that are being brandished about on the mainstream media, over on Twitter, or maybe even when you use Grok to get a little bit of information, they're low end. They are low end. There is so much sinister goings on happening in the background that we'll just never know. But let's just say, having billions and billions of euros, taxpayer money, being spent to eradicate the Irish people is something that Conor's not interested in, and I'm certainly not fucking interested in it either. The firm controlled by McGanley's family received more than 50 million in payments between April 2022 and September 2023. This is on top of another 83 million paid to the company belonging to Mr. McGaney since 2020. With the procurement of asylum accommodation as taken over by the Department of Integration, here's one for you. Do a little deep dive on the Department of Integration and ask a couple of questions in terms of, one, where's your money coming from? 2, who's overseeing the fact that your money is being spent to directly replace the Irish people? Between the NGO scam, the accommodation for asylum seeker scam, and the fact that money is being sent internationally to push this narrative, Department of Integration have a lot to answer for. 83 million, 22 million, 31 million, 130 million, 50 million. This is outlandish. And you got to get to the stage with people like Banty McGaney where you're going, okay bro, what's the end goal here? How do you sleep at night? Are you lying to yourself to get a night's sleep? Are you telling yourself that these people are fleeing war and they're coming here and they deserve the right to have a peaceful life? Is that what you're telling yourself? How can you look in the eyes of Irish men and women when you go for your point or when you go down to do your messages? You're an absolute disgrace. There are several Irish businessmen who have made a significant profit from housing migrants, particularly asylum seekers and Ukrainian refugees. Though government contracts here are the key figures and the details are based on only the available information. Remember, the information that's put out there into the public that you can grab like this doesn't even scratch the fucking surface. Seamus Banty McGaney, we heard it already, 130 million since 2020. Massive controversy around this absolute traitorous scumbag rat. What about Paul Collins, another migration accommodation site in Coolock? Collins reportedly earned 40 million in 3 years from housing migrants. Public attention grew due to the protests in Coolock site, and Collins discussed fleeing Ireland amid the backlash in a documentary. Of course you gotta flee. How can you walk around amongst the people that you're displacing? How can you walk around and look people in the fucking eyes, man? This is crazy. Michael Cochrane, operating out of County Meath, 65,000 per month to house migrants in a formal rural pub. Patrick O'Callaghan received 130 million since 2002 for running direct provisional centres in Dublin and Dundalk. His wealth places him as one of Ireland's top earners in the sector. Phelim McCluskey. Through Mosney Holidays, McCluskey operates a direct provisional centre, former Bulletin Resort in Meath, earning 23 million in 2023. The company is partly owned by an Isle of Man based entity. Alright. So there's a combination of the total estimates. Remember, these are lowball. 4 billion direct provisional centre, 3 billion Ukrainian refugees. Other migrant related housing, 2 billion. Approximately 9.4 billion over the last 20 years. I'd say double that and you'd be actually closer to the real number. But let's just go on this number. 9 billion of Irish taxpayer money being spent for something that 75% of the Irish people have been asked about, have been polled and said that they were not comfortable with it and they think that it should be stopped immediately. 9 billion of your money is being spent to replace you. I jump in and I ask a bunch of questions here about NGOs and migrant housing and just to get to the bottom of that. And in conclusion, from like an AI search engine, they're talking about 3 to 4 billion. I have it on very good authority that this number 3/4 billion on the NGOs is lowball, that it's closer to 9 or 12 billion. Two NGOs, non-government body organisations that aren't supposed to receive funding, but they do. They're completely propped up by the Irish government. They receive money from the Irish government, they receive money from the EU, and they receive money from philanthropic outside interests, all for the replacement of Irish people, all to fund these blue-haired freaks to head off into other countries and convince people from Sudan to pop over here and, show their aggression towards the Irish people. The Irish Refugee Council and Maasai, two of the biggest proponents of this garbage, these people are taking monumental amounts of money out of the taxpayer's pocket. So every time you try walk down to your local store, you go to your local town and you have to wade through an army of aggressive Muslim men, remember that you're actually paying out through the nose for it. Cost of living crisis, that's why. Reports coming out this week about Ireland being the second most expensive country to live in the EU. You know why now? Because you're paying for aggressive immigrants to come in here and take over. So you can think whatever you want to think about Conor McGregor, but ask yourself the question, out of all the names that you hear being mentioned in terms of who could be the next president of Ireland, which one of them are going to have the guts, the balls and the wallet to stand up to this absolute racket? Which one of them are going to talk out against the plantation of Ireland? Which one of them are going to have the guts to say that diversity is not our strength, multiculturalism just didn't work. We can see it right in front of our eyes. It hasn't worked. I know one person that has the guts to say it. Conor McGregor. Let me know what you think down below. Cheers.